Thank you, Jess. Shall we just pray? Father, I pray that you will come by your Holy Spirit and touch each and every one of us this morning. Would our hearts be open, our ears be open, our minds be open to hear your word and to apply it in our lives today. Amen. It's a hands up moment. Has anyone ever owned a car that is over 3 years old? Okay, slightly different this time. Has anyone had the luxury of private healthcare and had a Bupa, or other brands available, an annual health check? Oh, quite a few. Well, we are in Chiswick, aren't we? So, silly me, I forgot. Or indeed, have you sat through an annual work appraisal or the dreaded, wait for it, the dreaded parents' evening? I think that's quite a lot of people. What have all these three things got in common? They are all moments in time when we take stock and we make sure we're in the best position for what lies ahead. If it's an MOT on a car, then the garage will check that it's safe and that everything is in good working order. In a health check, they're looking for any early symptoms of something that could be an issue in the future and give advice on how to live a healthier life. And in a work or school scenario, it's a review of all that happened in the previous year and a look forward to the objectives for the year ahead, focusing on improving performance. Well, today, at the start of Lent, we're starting a new series on a spiritual MOT of our lives. And we're going to be looking at 6 areas: generosity, hearing God, life in the Spirit, inner life holiness, community and church life, and mission in action. All elements that we are called to consider as part of our journey of discipleship. This morning, we kick off with a review, in-depth review of our generosity. Where are we now? Where do we need to be for our spiritual health and as part of that discipleship journey? Now, before you all have a moan and say, well, you went on about that last year, Ruth, which is true, I admit, but I hope you all spotted the reference to an annual check. It's no good saying, well, my car passed its MOT last year, so I don't need to bother this year. That could be a problem. And I didn't really like my appraisal last year, so I don't think I'll bother pitching up to this year's one. That's not going to work either. For our spiritual health, we need to be constantly reviewing our spiritual checklist. And generosity is just one of the items on that list. Our first passage in Matthew is part of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, Jesus' direction to us, his moral teachings, and part of the core principles of Christian discipleship. Many of us seem to spend our lives saving up, don't we? We save up as kids, maybe for a bike or some large item. Next slide, please, Chung. We save for a holiday. I could do with one of those at the moment. We save for retirement. That is definitely me in retirement. And we save for a rainy day. And there have been quite a few of those just recently, haven't there? Or for that one item that we think will finally make us feel secure and happy. In today's passage, Jesus isn't just giving us financial advice. He's also examining our spiritual heart. He begins with a reality check. He says, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth. Back in Jesus' day, wealth was measured in fine clothes, grain, and precious metals. But Jesus points out that moths eat the clothes. Well, they certainly eat an awful lot of mine in Ealing, I can tell you. Rust or rot over the years will eat the grain, and thieves can dig through those earth walls and steal all the gold. In short, earthly treasures are simply not a guarantee of security. Spending all your money on earthly treasures is a high-risk investment. If you build your identity on what you own, your peace of mind will be as fragile as the things you possess. And I suspect that we all know deep down that earthly treasures do not give us lasting satisfaction, and in fact, sometimes quite the opposite. Jesus then offers us a better option. We are to store up for ourselves treasures in heaven. But how exactly are we supposed to do that? I think the idea is that we invest in heaven by using our earthly resources, our time, our money, our talents, for things that last forever. So through generosity, by serving God through our obedience to him, by focusing on kingdom priorities rather than self-centered pursuits, we are investing in heaven and something that will last forever. When you help someone in need, when you support the spread of the gospel, or when you sacrifice something for the sake of Christ, you are transferring currency from a world where it expires to a world where it endures. We all know the saying, you can't take it with you, don't we? But as Randy Alcon famously once said, however, you can send it on ahead. In verse 21, Jesus reveals the why behind the command. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Our bank account, our time usage, and our energy reveal our true affections. It's interesting to note the order, the direction that Jesus places on treasures and heart. We often think that the treasure follows the heart, don't we? That we give to what we already love. But Jesus says the contrary. He says the heart follows the treasure. The heart follows the treasure. If you move your treasures, your focus, your resources towards the things of God, your heart's affections will eventually follow. You don't wait until you feel like loving the kingdom. You invest in the kingdom, and then your heart will catch up. We need to practice generous giving and kingdom work as a defense against our own personal greed. So what would happen if we all looked at our bank statements or our calendars? Where would they say that our hearts are? Does our life reflect a desire for God or for stuff? We need to stop relying on temporary security and start investing in what lasts forever. We need to be a people who trade the temporary for the eternal, finding ultimate security not in what we hold in our hands, but in the one who holds us in his. Now let's turn to our second passage in 2 Corinthians. In a nutshell, Corinthians 9, 6-11 teaches us that generous, voluntary, and cheerful giving mirrors God's grace and generosity and results in abundant spiritual and practical blessings. Paul uses a vivid farming metaphor in this passage to change how we think about our resources. He explains that giving isn't a loss to us, but a planting. Just as a farmer who only plants a few seeds can only expect a small crop, a sparing heart will reap a sparing harvest. On the other side of the coin, those who sow bountifully will reap a bountiful harvest. The more generous we are, the greater the benefit not only to the kingdom, but to us as well as individuals. And this is not about the amount of money that we give. If we think back to the widow's mite, a story found in both Mark and Luke, which tells of a poor widow donating 2 tiny copper coins, mites, to the temple treasury. Jesus taught that she gave far more than the rich because she gave sacrificially, and Jesus prioritized her faith over the amount. Paul goes on in verse 7 to talk about the attitude of the giver. He says that giving should be a deliberate choice made in the heart. It should not be done grudgingly or out of compulsion. Paul tells us that God loves a cheerful giver, which is a very well-used verse by all who've ever tried to fundraise in a church scenario, I can assure you. It's interesting, though, that the Greek word here for cheerful is hilarios, from which we get the word hilarious. It suggests a heart so excited to bless others that giving becomes a source of joy. God desires us to have a willing, happy heart. This is not just a monetary transaction. Now, a common fear, I think, particularly for those who are new to giving, is that we're going to run out and be left short. But Paul addresses this head on in verses 8 to 11. God is capable of providing every blessing in abundance, ensuring that we have enough money for ourselves and plenty for good work. It highlights that we don't need to be afraid of running out of money. God's supply is unlimited. And if you speak to those who've been blessed by giving, the most common thing you hear is that they really haven't missed what they have given. That they have so often been blessed in return. In verse 11, you will be made rich in every way so that you can be generous in every occasion. We are blessed so that we can keep on blessing, which is one of those wonderful virtuous circles. And what does Paul say is the ultimate result? The ultimate result is thanksgiving. He goes on to say in verses 12 to 15 that when people receive these gifts, it produces an overflow of thanksgiving to God. Our generosity becomes a living, tangible proof of the gospel, leading others to praise and thank God. It's quite clear from these passages that Jesus takes the matter of giving very seriously. And this is primarily for our own good, as it not only helps to serve others, but it also makes sure that our hearts are in the right place. Giving alongside serving, praying, and worship or thanksgiving is a fundamental part of our discipleship. It is part and parcel of being a Christian. Today, we want to thank those who give to the church so faithfully, and I really hope that you've found it to be a blessing over the years. I know that I have. And we particularly want to encourage those who haven't yet made that commitment to regular giving, to take that bold step and do so. If you're nervous, start small. Last year I talked about, could you have a cup of coffee and a croissant with Jesus once a week? Think of that amount of money. Can you afford that? If he came up to you now and tapped you on the shoulder, what would you say? You'd say yes. I know that some of you started giving regularly last year after our last appeal, and I would love to hear from you how that's gone. Do come and see me afterwards and let me know your stories. On your seats, you have a sheet explaining the whys and the hows of giving. But I just now would like to end with a brief video when 2 very brave members of the congregation told me a little bit about their journey to generosity. Hi, Ali.
Hello.
Can I ask you how long you've been coming to Christchurch W4, and also when you started your regular giving?
Yep, so I started coming with the girls in 2019, and I started giving regularly just recently, probably about 3 months ago. I'd been wanting to start giving for quite a long time. We love coming to Christchurch. I love how the girls have so many resources in their groups, and just the community, obviously the tea and coffee, biscuits, we've been on a pretty tight shoestring for many years actually, unfortunately Mum passed away, so I'm now in a little bit of a better position. So even though I don't give a huge amount, it's what I can give, and I'm really happy that I was able to start doing that. I was very prompted by the Lord to give, but I did feel quite a bit of resistance to it. I was under a bit of spiritual attack, which really made me feel unhappy, because I didn't really understand why I felt like that. But in the end, actually, I just thought back to all the is it odd or is it God moments since my faith journey began, and how much this church has given to us. There was this one particular time when I didn't know whether or not to buy a chicken or a lasagna, because I couldn't afford both.
Oh, bless.
And it really pained me and troubled me, but I bought the chicken because I knew it would go further over the week. And later on that afternoon, actually one of the congregation of this church came to my door and brought a lasagna, really randomly. It was just after COVID,
Wow.
And it was, and it probably sounds just like such a silly story, but for me, this is how our lives have just been peppered with God's goodness. And so to be able to, even if it's what I give, what me and the girls give a month is, just a couple of months worth of googly eyes for the kids, just to think that it might bless someone here when they come on a Sunday, one of the children, bless one of the adults with a cup of tea and a biscuit. That's why I was really happy to give. But there was quite a bit of resistance in me.
Yeah, so you were cautious to begin with.
Well, the devil's on my back a lot. I think most people who love the Lord do experience that. And I'll find a million, excuses. But in the end, I did take the plunge and I did start giving. And I'm really glad that I did, and I'll continue to.
And what would you say to somebody else who's feeling a little bit cautious about that at the moment?
I just think that the Lord will guide you, and if he's speaking to your heart, listen. And, I'd encourage anyone to give, because it's kind of released me a little bit, because there was a good conversation going on in my head for a long time about it. And I don't really know why, but as soon as I committed to giving, it just felt right. And I know that that's what I was called to do while I can. So I'd encourage anyone to.
Thank you, Ali.
So I started coming to Christchurch in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
I first started giving regularly when I was a student at a different church, and then was sort of giving a small amount as a student. And I moved back to Newcastle for a while, but when I came back to London, I didn't have a job, I was unemployed, and I didn't really feel like I could give regularly at the time. I wasn't quite sure how much I could be giving. I didn't really feel very financially stable at the time, but I kind of felt really called that I should be giving something. But it was quite a kind of nerve-wracking thing. I was just sort of wrestling with it a bit, and I was also really struggling with being unemployed. But yeah, I sort of felt that God was asking me to sort of take a step of faith and sort of pray to him about what I should be giving financially at that time. And it was also kind of a linked step of faith to sort of trust God that I was going to get a job, that he was going to sort of, he would sort of put this job in front of me and I would find something secure. But at the time, I sort of just needed to take that step, and I decided to start giving regularly and set up a standing order before I kind of had this secure job. Yeah.
So if I say to you, what impact has it had on your life in giving, what would you say to that then?
It's had a really big impact. It's sort of helped me think that it's kind of been a reminder to me that my money isn't really my money, and it's God's money, and sort of I'm lucky to be in the position I am, and that God's put me in that position, and it's sort of kind of I feel like this church as well has given so much to me that it sort of impacted me in that I felt I really needed to give back to this church that's given so much to me and means so much to me as well.
Great. And you found your husband, for one thing.
Exactly. I found a lot of things and it's done a lot. Yeah.
And what would you say to encourage somebody else who was, because I think it's fair to say that you were a little cautious then about giving at one stage. So what would you say to somebody who's perhaps a little bit cautious about giving? What advice would you give them?
I would just say that it doesn't really matter how much you give, and if you are not feeling sort of in a stable position financially, then just trusting God that He will provide. I sort of realise now that I didn't need to worry about that money that I was giving, that God would never put me in a position where He wasn't going to provide for me. So I think just sort of start out small and take that leap of faith. And I mean, God's put me in an amazing job now, and yeah, I just feel like it's a form of worship. We shouldn't really think about it as, oh, I have to give. It's sort of, we get to give back to God. So yeah, I just think come at it from that and just pray to God about how much you kind of feel like you can give, even if it's like the smallest amount. It doesn't really matter as long as you kind of get into that regular sacrificial giving routine back to God.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks.
My thanks to Ali and Beth, and I hope that those who started giving fairly recently will be encouraged to consider if they can now increase that even. And those that do not yet currently give will be encouraged to start doing so, to enjoy the Lord's blessing. Shall we just end in prayer?